We've got each other, and that's a lot for love. We'll give it a shot.
My name is Paul. I'm an American living in Japan for 25 years. Join me and my wife as we relocate to Okinawa and build the home of our dreams from the ground up. If you love beaches, sunsets, and tropical locations, I invite you to subscribe and follow along. Hello and welcome everybody to the Q&A episode. Cheers. Let's see if you can guess where I am. I didn't want to film in my apartment this time, so I decided to come to a karaoke box here in Shibuya.
Her name is Rio, and she dances on the sand.
Okay, let's move on to your questions. I hope the sound of people singing in the karaoke room next to me don't bother you. First, we have a comment from Egg Boy. Very nice compliment. Thanks for your comment there. And he's also curious about the video editing process, software, camera equipment, etc. I'm a Mac person, so I use Final Cut Pro for the video editing. The first few episodes, I think 3 episodes, were filmed only on my iPhone 12 Pro Max. I wasn't really sure how serious I would make this channel, or how highly produced I wanted it. So little by little I got more serious and bought other equipment. I bought the drone, as you've probably seen in previous episodes. Right now I'm using a DJI Pocket 2 to film this, and that has a remote mic right here, which makes the sound better. And the drone is also from DJI. So basically that's it. As I go along, I may buy more equipment. Depends on how the channel goes.
I'm all out of love. What am I without you? I can't be too late to say that I was so wrong.
So next we have a comment from Say Peel, who mentions that in central and northern Okinawa there is a healthy population of habu, which is a poisonous snake, and he's wondering if that was a concern for me as I bought this property, which was overgrown and had the abandoned house on it before I cleared it, and any other wildlife around you, your current property. Also, TJ mentions a similar thing about whether I'm concerned about the habu living there. So I know they do exist. I've never seen one. The real estate agent mentioned it to me when I was looking at the property, so we were certainly careful walking around in the weeds and looking at the old house. There's a lot of people that live around there. There's people who farm their land, so I guess they deal with the snakes. I better look and figure out what they actually look like and figure out what I'm going to do if I ever see one, but I'm hoping it won't be a problem. By the way, in terms of other wildlife, I do see mongoose around my property. Mongoose were imported in 1910 to control the snake population, which didn't work at all apparently, but they're still running around there. I see them. And also I've seen some very large spiders. Please don't tell my wife. Okay, next we have a comment from Graham Good. Thanks for your comment, Graham. He is concerned that I might regret it if I cut down the trees lining my property to open up the view, because there's obviously typhoons, and the trees do a good job of blocking the wind from the typhoons, and that's totally true. Like every architect or builder or vendor that I've talked to about this project always mention the trees. They block the typhoon wind. They actually call it a bofudin in Japanese, violent wind forests. Trees that block the violent wind or the strong winds. So it is a thing in Okinawa. I'm sure a lot of people would like to keep the trees. But honestly, we really, really wanted the view to the west and the sunset, so we are going to cut down the trees on the west, but we're going to try a product called hurricane fabric, and there's a distributor in Okinawa for hurricane fabric, and you basically, pin it to the ground into your house, and you protect your windows and glass doors that way, and it's supposed to really, stop the wind pretty well. So we will see how that goes. I hope it works.
Tell me why ain't nothing but a heartache. Tell me why.
Okay, a lot of people ask about my background, my work. How did I get to Japan? Do I speak Japanese? G-Man, 111 Milltown, Avens, and Faint Boot Cat all asked very similar questions. And I'll tell you about my background right now.
When I'm turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so.
So basically, I'm American. I went to college in America. I studied abroad in Japan for 6 months. And I really didn't have a big plan in college of what I wanted to do. It's just a friend of mine was going to Japan that sounded interesting, so I kind of copied him and came to Japan to study, and I liked it a lot. So after college, I came back on the JET program, which is a government program, a Japanese government program that brings English speakers to Japan to teach English alongside Japanese teachers. And I landed in junior high schools and taught English for 2 years, and then moved on to business. I was in Toyota City for that program, so I transitioned to the Toyota Motor Corporation and started working for them for a few years, and then went back to the United States for business school. And ever since then, I've kind of been the Japan country manager, a general manager, or head of Asia for several American companies. I won't mention my company name or industry right now just because I don't want my people I work with, my colleagues, seeing this channel. But it's generally consumer products, and I do sales and marketing kind of things. I speak with our distributors in Japan and our retailers and things like that when new products come out. In terms of Japanese, I obviously studied Japanese when I came to Japan in college, and I was very serious about it. I think it took me about 4 years to feel comfortable speaking Japanese. I took the proficiency test for foreigners for Japanese and passed the top level in about 4 years. Yeah, I think I was about 24, 25 years old at that time. I was already working for Toyota, so working in a Japanese-speaking environment obviously is the best way to get comfortable with the language. So I was kind of on a speedy track and got to a good level of proficiency in 4 years. Okay, next I have a couple of questions regarding getting a mortgage in Japan as a foreign person. My Owl's Library asked, what are the criteria needed to get a mortgage in Japan when you are a foreigner? Also, Stephen Smith asked several questions about the difference between getting a loan for an existing house versus land. Could you negotiate with the bank, like offering to pay more down payment or shortening the loan period, and which banks are easier to work with, and do they differ drastically from one another? And so I will answer this in detail in a future video, I think, because it's a really complicated topic, and I'm just learning about it. I'm at the pre-approval stage right now. I have friends who are much more knowledgeable than myself, foreign residents of Japan who've gotten loans and actually built houses. So I will gather some information and do a detailed video on this in the future, but I'll just answer this simply from my own experience right now. First of all, in terms of being a foreign person, all you need is permanent residency. I say all you need is permanent residency. It's not an easy thing to get. You have to be living in Japan married to a Japanese person for 3 years, or even if you're not married to a Japanese person, you have to live in Japan 10 years, and then you can apply for permanent residency. And if you have permanent residency, then you're just like any other mortgage applicant, and the bank just cares about your long work history and how much income you make and things like that. In terms of the differences between an existing home and land, I really don't have experience with buying an existing home in Japan, although I would imagine that you have to have an inspection, just like you would in America or other countries, to satisfy your mortgage bank that the house is actually in good shape and meets building codes and things like that. I asked a friend who bought a house here in Tokyo, a foreign resident of Tokyo, and he didn't remember arranging an inspection himself, so he thought maybe it was the seller's responsibility to do that. In terms of negotiating with the bank for the interest rate, that's a process that I'm going through right now. The banks really differ quite a lot in terms of interest rates and kinds of loans and things like that. Also the kind of documents they require. So it's really surprising how different all the banks are, and I'll get into that in detail in a future video. The big so-called mega banks in Japan, like Mitsubishi UFJ or Mitsui Sumitomo, Mizuho Bank, et cetera, they have very, very low interest rates, it seems. But there's also other regional banks and also non-bank lenders in Japan as well, and all of them have very different products. The typical loan in Japan is 35 years. However, you have to pay off your loan by age 80, so I can't have a 35-year loan. It'll be shorter than that because I'm in my 50s. Next, I have a question from Steve Hins, who lived in Okinawa quite some time ago. He has a house, and he says he wishes that it was facing more east-west, and he asked me to talk about that in terms of my home and the facing. Basically, our home will be a rectangle situated north-south, so that one facing will face west. And I know from speaking to the architect and others that the sun will beat down on the house, and it might be quite hot because of that facing west. But we will have some outdoor patio that will be covered with a roof, so hopefully that will offer some shade. We may have to look into shade fabrics and stuff like that to protect us from the sunshine. But we basically wanted to design the house to look straight at the western view, so hopefully we don't get boiled in our house, and hopefully we don't regret that.
Hold me now. It's hard for me to say I'm sorry. I just want you to know.
Okay, next we have a question from Blue Mount. I want to hear more about the negotiation process and the time it took to agree on the price. Did you get to meet the owner of the land, or was the transaction through the agent only? This is a great question, and sorry I didn't talk about that more in my videos. The property was listed for 27 million yen, but when I went to see it, obviously there was the abandoned house on it, and the seller's agent indicated that it would probably cost about 2 million yen to remove the old house and the vegetation and things like that. It had also been on the market for about a year, so I thought it was appropriate to offer a lower price than what it was listed for. I've talked in previous videos about how the yen has gotten weaker, so from my eyes the land was looking pretty cheap in the first place for its size and location to the beach. So I didn't really want to offer a super low price and potentially anger the seller, because I was really decided on this land and I didn't want to get another one. So I offered 24 million yen, 3 million yen less than the listed price, and the seller accepted it. This is all through the agent at this point. So I kind of just discounted it for having to remove that old house. And I'm glad he accepted the offer. I did meet the seller at the bank in the end when I had to transfer the full payment. The deposit payment I sent in advance, but the full payment I did at his bank. It's kind of strange they don't use escrow in all cases here in Japan. Basically, the seller's agent, the seller, I, and a judicial clerk went to his bank branch. The judicial clerk kind of led the process where we both signed all the papers to transfer the title, and then I got on my laptop and actually did a bank transfer to him, and we waited 30 minutes until it cleared, and then the transaction was done. So I did meet the seller in the end, and gave him a present, as I came from Tokyo, and said thanks to him. He was a really nice person. Okay, next we have a question from Eel Ayesh. Eel says, did you ever consider Okinawa a dangerous place to be during PRC's invasion of Taiwan? So I think they are referring to the August, 2022 live fire training that China did around Taiwan. Obviously, China's very focused on Taiwan right now and wants to bring it back in the fold with mainland China. And, there's also disputes between China and Japan on the Senkaku Islands. They're part of Japan, but China says they have a claim to it that dates, 100 years ago or so. So, in general, yeah, I'm concerned about that. I'm really concerned about China's movements. I hope they don't invade Taiwan. Their live fire exercise, I think some of the rounds went over an island of Okinawa called Yonaguni, which is about 110 miles from Taiwan, super close to Taiwan. So I am concerned about that. I hope nothing happens, obviously. I know that, there's a lot of American military bases here in Okinawa and Japan, and I'm sure Japan and America would make some kind of response to that. So I hope it doesn't, escalate at all. So a little nervous about that, but I'm hoping for the best.
We'll give it a shot. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, living on a prayer.
Okay, last we have a question from Emmanuel Martin. He says, after living in Tokyo all these years, how do you think it will be socializing in a small town? Which is a fantastic question. And I have to say first that a lot of people have reached out to me through this channel to my email address, people who are living in Okinawa already as foreigners, and they've been very welcoming and hospitable and gotten a lot of great information from them. I've already actually visited one person at his house, so I really appreciate those people. In terms of your question, you know, for me, the top thing on my mind is like living again with my wife. We've been living apart. She's in Singapore, I'm in Tokyo. So, you know, getting into our new house, getting used to life together again, getting into a routine together, kind of like slowly, organically learning how we want to operate in Okinawa and the neighborhood. And I'm sure over time we'll make friends together and figure out how we want to socialize, but top on my mind is just, you know, getting our life together, kicked off there in Okinawa.
I am a man who will fight for your honor. I'll be the hero you're dreaming of.
Hello there, this is Paul. As I edit this video, there's a couple of things I want to add. You may be able to tell that I have a cold. I got a cold in the past couple of days after singing in the karaoke box here. Anyways, first of all, Stephen Smith asked me about the difference between getting a bank loan for an existing home and a new home build, and I didn't really answer that properly, so I wanted to add a couple of comments. When you're building a new home, the bank wants to see the plans, they want to see the actual quote to build the house, and this is going to happen very close to when you get the building approval. So when you're getting a mortgage to build a new house, it's going to be quite late when you're finished designing the house, you're almost ready to build it, and then the bank wants those final documents and approval, and they're going to approve the final amount for your mortgage. So obviously when you're buying an existing home, it can happen pretty quickly, but if you're going to build a home, it's going to take quite a long time. In our case, it's going to take like all of this year, 2023, to design the house and get the approval, and the bank loan will come more toward the end of this year. Next, I got a kind of a late question from Jimmy Russell. Is that your real name? Anyways, and he is studying to be a doctor, and he's wondering about how to immigrate to Japan. You know, he mentions coming here to do research or practice medicine in the countryside and things like that. And, you know, Japan is not super easy to immigrate to. You know, really, they want you to come here because you have work, you have an employer, and they're going to be a guarantor on your work visa, or they want to see that you're married to a Japanese national and you're just coming back with them. They don't have a retirement visa. They have kind of an entrepreneur visa, but that, you know, requires setting up a company in Japan, obviously. I'm not familiar with things for like scientific research or medical research, but it's not an easy task to come to Japan. So, I mean, obviously the easiest way is to come for work or be married to a Japanese person. So, sorry I can't be of much help there. Okay, finally, I hope you enjoyed my silly karaoke in this video. I hope it was more funny and not too cringy. Please tell me in the comments, what is your go-to karaoke song? If you have to sing a song somewhere, tell me your go-to karaoke song or your funny karaoke story, okay? So I'll see you in the next update. Take care.